schools. Our children are struggling to learn the basics of primary education, while it seems that my boys at school are spending hours per week being taught to use technology and information that will be obsolete within 3 years. Why are my sons learning to program computer games and surf the web when they have yet to master the basic multiplication tables? Why are they learning to send emails when they don't even know the proper structure of a letter or to write cursive? The reason for primary education is to gain a firm understanding of the basics, and technology at my son's schools has become mostly a distraction for them. It is obvious that technology must be utilized, but it must be to make education more efficient and to focus the use of technology to teaching only the basics of primary education, which will never become obsolete. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Keith.
Next is Nancy Grace.
Hi. My name is Nancy Grace. Thank you, board members, for this opportunity to speak. I am a concerned taxpayer, now deeply concerned about what I've learned about Common Core. I'm here tonight to urge you to please oppose Common Core. Common Core is eliminating the parents' and the teachers' controls over children's education while it destroys the role the local districts play. Common Core puts the federal government and regulators from outside of North Carolina into control over our children's education. We're already suffering from the federal government's takeover of our health care, take controlling from the IRS and the NSA spying and threatening and controlling citizens. Now, Common Core has arrived to take control of our children. I'm just going to speak just in one aspect of the data mining. And Betty, nowhere in our Constitution does it give permission to usurp and hijack the parental controls over our children and their education. Common Core includes a massive data gathering system and unfettered access to our kids. The data is already being gathered, and there are going to be MRI machines placed in our children's classrooms. They intend to map the activity of the child's brain. There will be sensors strapped to our children to monitor things like facial expressions, stress, talk about stress, emotional response, posture. A wrist monitor will track the blood pressure and stress. Besides tracking and gathering the healthcare records of your children and their families, there will be gathering religious affiliations, income levels of the families, voting records, voting status, blood types, blood testing, behavioral information on our children, and hundreds of other pieces of data. Even our child's bus location and the time the bus stop pickup is. A breathtaking violation of one's child and the family of that child. I just want to ask you, what is the purpose? Who will gather this information, and the citizens will not have control over it. The federal government has no right to this kind of information on our kids and on our families. I don't need to remind you the loss of privacy in the fact it's tremendous control and power over our youngest citizens. They intend to track everything about your children and you. The information will be stored. You'll have no control over the information, nor control over how it's used. I'm out of time. Barely scratched the surface. A whole page of websites explaining in detail.
Ms. Grace, thank you.
Next is Nancy Cooper.
Thank you for letting me speak tonight. I need to say quickly before I get into my comment that I am so pleased at what you shared tonight about the beginning teacher support program, and I think back to my abysmal student teaching days, which cured me of any desire to teach French. And I probably would have been in that profession if I had had you there. So by way of background, just to let you know, I am a homeschool teacher with 2 children who are going to be going to the public high school this fall. I come with a bachelor degree in French, creative writing, secondary education minor. My master's degree is in child and family from Western Carolina University. And before I was my second career as a homeschool mom, I was teaching and administrating in early childhood education in Asheville for a number of years. So that's my background, and my interest has skyrocketed, of course, in the public school. I was in my own little world, but since my children will be going to public schools, I'm very interested in all aspects of that more and more. Common Core has concerned me on a number of fronts, and I'm kind of busy, as we all are, so there's so many aspects that I haven't been able to dig in every area, and I was interested to hear what Ms. Grace had to say about data mining, because I have had concerns there but hadn't been able to really dig. But one interesting fact that I've been pondering a lot is something that we may not have thought of. The fact that with Common Core, the standards for not only our schools that we see as elementary, primary and secondary education will change, or however we see them changing, but that the standards for college level will necessarily be changing as well. And how that will be is in this way. First of all, within the Common Core standards and the requirements based upon the Race to the Top monies that are tied to that, is the requirement that any student who graduates from a Common Core program and then goes to college is required to be allowed to, how can I say this, is not allowed to enter a remedial class, but must be given a credit-bearing class. In other words, a student who needs some beefing up in a particular area is not going to be able to enroll in a class that is a remedial class, which does not give credit, but has to be in a credit-bearing class. Well, if you as a student are enrolling in a class, say a math class, a beginning class in college, but your math has taken you only to what, in my experience, would have been midway through the geometry 10th grade level.
Ms. Cooper.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Well, take it from there.
Finally, we have Lindsay first.
Good evening. I just want to change directions and publicly thank this board for standing behind teachers with its resolution in March to state very clearly to the General Assembly that our students and teachers deserve better than the 25% contracts. I encourage the board to go a step further by filing a friend of the court brief with Guilford and Durham County's challenge or an affidavit with NCAE's challenge. I applaud the board directive passed last month and eagerly await proposed policy providing career status to teachers who have earned it. When this policy is enacted, Buncombe County schools will be an even more attractive place to teach for the best teachers in the state. I want to thank this board for looking forward with hope and not backwards in fear. I spoke last month about possibility and courage, and I believe that the 200 to 300 teachers and supporters of public education who attended that meeting have felt that in the last month, have felt the possibility and courage of that this board opened, for which this board opened the door. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. First. All right, moving on next to our action agenda. We have budget amendment number 5. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved, Mr. Chair.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay, any discussion or questions?
I had a question.
Okay.
I can't find it yet.
Does anyone else have a question while Mr. Craig looks for his question?
I sent a question just asking about the enrollment numbers, the ADM.
We had an adjustment for the second month. Our initial allotments were based on 25,779 students, and the adjusted second month ADM came in at 25,698, which is a difference of 81 students. So that's the reason for some of the negatives on the budget amendment.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Mr. Craig?
Yeah, I can't find. I have it printed, but I can't find it. On there was a 200,000+ change for the summer reading program,
Yes, sir.
the allotment, and I was just curious if that is, I mean, how that was allotted, and I assume we have no idea how many students are going to be in the summer reading program. So how are they able to allot when we don't know the cost? And a follow-up to that is, do we have an idea yet of how much is going to come from the local money?
I don't think those numbers have been established yet. I'm not exactly sure how the money came down. There was a base allotment, and then it was based on certain student population, but I can send that to you on an email.
Okay.
But I don't think we know exactly at this time how much will be involved, how many students will be involved in the summer reading program.
For 600, how many will be?
Okay, yeah, if you
600.
copy everyone on the board with that, please.
Sure,
Thank you.
absolutely,
Yeah.
Thank you.
absolutely.
All right, any other questions?
So I don't know.
I'm sorry.
I know Chip had several questions in there. I think the first one was about where how the 271,000 came to be. I guess it's from the state, but
That is correct.
and how did they determine
She's
how
gonna
much?
email
I'm going to email
That's
the board.
part of the email. Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Yep. All right, anything else? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, moving on next.
Thank
Thank you. Next, we have a proposed resolution regarding the, let's see, which one are we first? The voucher program. Mr. Craig, did you want to read that, or?
I'm going to read it, but do you need a motion first, or do you need it read first?
Well, we'll just let you go ahead and read it, and then we'll see if we can get a motion in a second.
Titled Buncombe County Board of Education, whereas the North Carolina General Assembly passed Senate Bill 402 Hereafter Appropriation Act in July 2013, and whereas the Appropriations Act includes a provision appropriating $10 million to provide private school voucher program, whereas the fiscal note prepared for an earlier version of the voucher program indicates the General Assembly's intent to increase annual appropriations for the program to $50 million per year, whereas the voucher program created in the Appropriations Act does not require participating private schools to provide students with the opportunity to receive a sound basic education as required by the North Carolina Constitution, whereas the voucher program created in the budget bill does not require participating private schools to engage in non-discriminatory admissions practices, whereas the voucher program requires the State Board of Education to reduce funding to each local Board of Education in an amount equal to the local board's per pupil allocation for average daily membership multiplied by the number of students who have received vouchers and were enrolled in the local board schools during the prior semester, whereas reducing funding to public schools to fund a private school voucher program, particularly in the wake of substantial cuts to public education funding during the previous 5 years, will significantly impair local boards' ability to ensure that students have the opportunity to receive a sound basic education as required by the North Carolina Constitution. Whereas the voucher program created in the budget bill uses public funds for a non-public purpose in violation of the North Carolina Constitution, and whereas the voucher program will deny students an equal opportunity to receive a sound basic education and further has the ability to separate children based on a family's socioeconomic level. Now, therefore, be it resolved, the Buncombe County Board of Education hereby has significant concerns regarding the voucher program contained in the Appropriations Act and its impact on public education in North Carolina. And be it further resolved, the board requests the North Carolina General Assembly rescind all portions of the Appropriations Act that provide for private school vouchers. Potentially adopted this 10th day of April 2014 and signature of the superintendent and the chair.
Have a motion to approve.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
All right, any questions or discussion? Oh,
I have some questions. The voucher program you're referring to, is this the North Carolina Opportunity Scholarship Program?
Correct.
It's not mentioned in this, so I wanted to clarify the name of the program.
It's Senate
Senate Bill
Bill
402.
First line.
Okay, thank you. Are the appropriations for this program coming from the state public school fund, or are they from another source?
I believe that would be coming from the state.
But is it specifically from that fund, the state public school fund?
If a child from the Buncombe County Schools enrolls, there will be $4,200 taken from Buncombe County Schools allotment from that state public school fund to go to the private school. And I know the amount that the state allocated per child in 11-12 was $5,631. I don't know what the amount is, but it appears that they will take the full allocation from the Buncombe County Schools allotment and give less than the full allocation to the private school.
Well, I mean, that's not what I've read. I mean, I've read that they're only taking the $4,200 from the school, but that the true cost of the education is, of course, more than that. So the school system is, in effect, saving money.
Okay.
I don't know how the school system could save money because we're losing the allocation
Okay,
for
here's-
that child without reducing the number of teachers.
Mr. Campbell, are you on the board?
No, but I'm answering your questions. If you'd like an answer, I'll be happy
Well, you
to
were
provide
asking
one.
a question. But I have the
Sure.
data right in front of me. For the 2013-14 school year, the estimated state and local expenditure per pupil is $7,254. The scholarship is capped at $4,200. When a student moves from public to private school, the operational cost savings to the state is $4,828. So, there you have it.
Could you read that again, please?
But in that, you said it was savings to the state, not to the school.
Yeah, you're saving money to this, that's.
Right, which
money's
passes,
flowing.
the savings pass on to us.
No, they do not.
No.
We lose the full state amount per child that goes to a private school with no savings.
But that child is not in our system, so we don't need that money to educate that student. It follows the student, so to speak, at a lower cost.
We don't lose teachers, we don't lose buses, we don't lose employees, so there's no cost savings. We're losing revenue without any way to save.
There are also expenditures from the county level. We receive money that we will still receive, that county money, regardless of whether the student is here or not. If you divided that up per pupil expenditure as well, that money would be a savings.
Well, I think
because it
something else
stays.
that's important to realize is, a student doesn't necessarily, that all students don't cost us the same. Every student could be different, especially when we get into situations where, we have some special needs, special training, extra personnel required to work with those kids. And so the cost of your average student is probably going to be less than other students in the school system.
Exactly right. And that's why there was a voucher program put in place last year for students with disabilities, which you're not addressing. Apparently, you approve of that voucher program because those are expensive students. Is that the reasoning, that we aren't opposing that particular voucher program, but this one we are?
This board opposed that voucher
Yes.
program when it was passed.
Did we send a resolution?
Yes.
Okay. Well, thank you for clearing that
Sure.
up.
Yeah,
I didn't
I believe you were
remember that.
here when we did that.
I'm sure I voted
Yeah.
against it. Right. Well, the point is also that we're talking about, failing these students. We have 76% of our students who are economically disadvantaged that this program could help who did not pass the math and reading tests, for example. And, you know, to me, this is about the student. It's not about protecting the education establishment or bureaucracy. It's about what is in the best interest of our students. And if the public school is in some way failing the student, then, you know, why wouldn't we want to do what's best for them if a private school could help them with their education? Isn't that what should come first?
I have an alternative, and I might answer your thought.
Mm-hmm.
It's a private school. This board's elected to serve the people and the students of the Buncombe County Public Schools. If I were a member of the legislature, I think what I would do, if I wanted dollars to do this, I'd go raise private money for the private schools. I'd go to Walmart or some of the other large multi-billion-dollar folks and say, look, I've got this idea. We think it'll help our kids in our state in private schools, and we want your support in this. But I fail to see the logic ever in taking tax dollars out of the public schools to send someone to a private school with no data that shows me they're going to do better. The cost of most of the private schools that I'm aware of is much higher than $4,200, and what I see this becoming as the scale rises in year 2, 3, and 4 for what income a family has to have, this is going to become a program for kids who are already in private schools, and it's going to become a program for middle to upper middle class families and not for the disadvantaged. If it had come out and they had kept that ceiling low in terms of who qualifies financially, I could support it. But the plan that's in place to me is not appropriate for us representing the people and the students of the Buncombe County Public Schools to support. And this resolution, in my opinion, is appropriate to send to the state to say to them, we do not agree with what you're doing, and we think you should stop it.
It's interesting. I appreciate the comments from the public, and a lot of them, several folks said that we should have the local school boards involved in the decision, which for the most part I agree with. And it's interesting, as of March 27th, 72 school districts have have adopted a resolution against vouchers. 72 out of 115.
I'll address what Mr. Craig said first before I go back to Mr. Bryant's comments. I documented our work session back in February, and at that time our board chair announced that he had not put this resolution on our meeting agenda. And at that point, at that work session, not one single board member objected to it not being on the agenda, and that was the deadline to join the lawsuit with the School Board Association.
I'll answer that.
I'm not finished yet.
I'll answer. Mr. Chair,
said,
I'd like a chance to answer that when she's finished.
No problem.
The board chair said we could discuss our individual views at a meeting later that month with our state legislators. And of course, that meeting was canceled, and there's been no attempt to reschedule it. But of course, we can individually talk with our legislators with those concerns. And as I said, I wanted to address Mr. Bryant's comments as well. I happened to take a look on the Buncombe County School website under our purchasing department, and I saw a list of over 4,000 private vendors that we do business with. Every day we are giving taxpayer dollars to private companies, to private contractors with our school system. In essence, this Opportunity Scholarship Program is making the private school a contractor. So why are we not objecting to all that taxpayer dollars being given to private contractors that deal with the school system every day? We even contract out for day treatment programs with the YMCA. You know, we have education agreements with these private contractors. You know, how is this different?
Okay, Mr. Bryan?
I'll address, first off, the reason that not this resolution. I had asked, and I asked for it to be pulled, but I had put together a motion for this board to consider at the February meeting to join the lawsuit. I made the decision and I asked the chair to pull it because I didn't think it would send the proper message with us having a meeting a few weeks later that had been scheduled with the legislature and the county commission. In hindsight, that was a mistake on my part. I should have insisted or should have trusted my gut and left it there. I didn't do that. This is the next best thing. I don't even know how to, I mean, you're comparing apples to oranges when you take tax dollars that stay at the state level and send them to private institutions versus what you described. You know, I'm assuming, you know, if we're gonna buy food for our cafeterias from private vendors, for example, I mean, we've got to have somebody to buy food from to feed our kids. If the best place we can get pricing for our food for our kids is from private vendors, then that's what we need to do. That's an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars. I don't think this is an appropriate use of taxpayer dollars. I may be the only one on this board that feels that way. You may have convinced the board in this debate that the vote should be against this resolution. That'll be fine, but I think this is appropriate.
I will say, just for clarification, is at the end of that February meeting, I think most of you are, I know I received it. Did everyone receive the email that saying there was a deadline for joining the lawsuit? And it happened during the meeting, and so we really were kind of stuck at that point. We really could not join the lawsuit without, you know, unless we had approved something that night. And again, I had talked with, there were several things that I wanted us to hold off on until we had a chance to meet with the legislators, and as Mr. Bryant said, it was scheduled for later on that month. And so that has something to do with the timing of the way this has happened. So,
Mr. Bryant mentioned how if we could buy food at an appropriate price, you know, from private contractors, that we had to feed the children. Well, what if we can buy education at an appropriate price of $4,200 compared to $7,254 because we want to educate our children?
I think I've answered your question. This is an inappropriate use of state tax dollars, and the door that opens from this, I think, is far-reaching and could be much worse than just what we're even talking about here. Again, I may be the only person on this board that opposes this. We're going to vote shortly, and we'll find out. But I'm going to support this resolution.
Okay, board members, any other questions or comments?
I have a comment. I guess just want to go on record as to why I will be supporting this resolution. What concerns me is not so much the choice. I've always been for choice. What I realize, public school is not for every child. It's not the perfect fit. I will agree with that. That's, you know, why we have other options out there, and we allow people to homeschool. So, you know, we don't have the government saying you can't do that. We allow private schools. We allow co-op homeschooling. We even allow charter schools. So, you know, I think choice is a good thing. I like competition. Personally, I want to see Buncombe County Schools become the #1 game in town as far as competition, and I want us to market ourselves in a way that people want to come to us, and I think as a board that's what we should be striving for, not finding ways to push our kids out of the school system. But what concerns me is that this voucher or opportunity scholarship or whatever you want to call it, it may follow the student to the private school, but if for any reason that private school decides they no longer want that child, and they can do that for any reason, say the child misbehaves one day and they just decide he's not a good fit, that child will be asked to leave that school, but the money stays. So the money does not go back to a public school where that child now has to go. You can stop me if I'm wrong here, but yeah. So that's my big concern. You know, it's decreasing the public education budget by $11 million. Again, that's money that, if it doesn't work out in the private sector, doesn't come back to the public schools. And then the other thing is like, you know, Mr. Bryant said, it concerns me that in the future there's opportunities for people of higher income to get this voucher, and myself included. I find it very concerning when I receive 3 phone calls in a span of 2 weeks telling me how I might qualify for this opportunity scholarship. That's marketing, and I have a real concern with that. That's marketing to, hey, you may not qualify this year, but in 3 years, when we lift the income eligibility, you might. And again, that to me sends the wrong message. You're giving away money that will go to private schools that discriminate. Again, I'm all for choice. I think choice, great options, love it. Do not like the idea of money following a student to a school that can then kick that student out or not even accept them in the first place, and that money does not come back to the public schools.
Okay. Any other questions or comments?
I did want to mention what Amy said about competition, and I agree with her that it's a good thing. And I feel that that Buncombe County Schools should not fear that competition. You know, I think we are doing a fantastic job, and that there are, though, those students falling through the cracks, so to speak. You know, whether it's partly due to a family situation. You know, I feel like our teachers are working hard to teach all of our students, but sometimes their hands are tied by things like this the Common Core standards and the curriculum used to implement those standards. So why should we deny at most 20 children from Buncombe County Schools, you know, could participate in this? Only 2,500 scholarships are available for the coming school year. I don't think we need to fear this. As I said, competition is a good thing. It can only make us better and stronger. And, you know, many people will choose not to apply for this. And as you know, there's already been an injunction put in place to stall this program, and it may not even start this coming year. I think we're a little bit late into the game to, you know, propose this resolution. And that's why I'll be voting no, basically, for these reasons.
Okay. All in favor?
Can I just make one more comment? Yes. I just want to make it very clear, I'm not going to speak for the rest of the board. They can certainly nod their head in agreement if they want, but I don't think, I personally, as a board member, do not fear this law, opportunity scholarship, whatever. I feel that I have the guts to stand up against what I think is morally wrong.
Okay. All in favor of the resolution?
I'm sorry, Bob. Can I please comment on that? One last, this will be my last comment. There's a part of this that hasn't been addressed, a part of this resolution, saying that the private schools, insinuating that they may not provide a adequate education for students. Yet, we're worried about that. It's required in the Opportunity Scholarship Program that a standardized test be given at the end of the year. So there is accountability there. I think there should be more accountability with the public school as far as we are allowing the test scores that we had in the spring, which were horrendous,
Mr. Chair,
and could indicate
making a speech now and not addressing the item on the table.
Well, I am. I'm talking about the issue of the quality of the education.
You're speaking to test scores from the spring. You're not speaking to the resolution that's on the table.
I'm talking about the standardized test requirement for private schools versus the test requirement for public schools. There's no way to put a public school out of business, so to speak. They can stay in business even if the children are scoring extremely low. And I know test scores are not the only indicator of success and, you know, failure of a school system. But, you know, I have an issue with that as well.
Wasn't Buncombe County Schools above average?
Well,
above the state.
Above the state?
Yes.
And weren't the standards, as we had a long presentation, weren't the tests harder this year?
Yes.
And
Okay,
so on
here,
average, the score
Mr. Craig, Mr. Craig, we're a little off topic.
Sorry, I don't know how I
Well,
got
we're
there.
not above average. If you consider that 51% of our students can't
All right,
read
Ms.
at
Baldwin,
grade
we're-
level.
We're going to move forward,
That's above
okay?
average.
Thank you. All right, all in favor of the resolution, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. All right, moving on, next we have a resolution opposing the Common Core state standards. Ms. Baldwin, would you like to read your resolution?
Yes. Whereas the North Carolina State Board of Education voted in July 2010 to adopt the Common Core state standards, and the North Carolina General Assembly passed laws in 2011 instructing the North Carolina State Board of Education to implement the Common Core state standards and assessments. And whereas the Common Core state standards bind our state to standards owned and copyrighted by private organizations from which we cannot subtract, replace, or add to beyond an additional 15%. And whereas the Common Core state standards have never been validated empirically to establish increased student achievement, nor have the standards been demonstrated to be the vehicle to build the skills to make our students and nation internationally competitive. And whereas the assessments have not been fully developed and costs are unknown, and whereas the required costs associated with the assessments, expanding the current number of technological devices, and expanding bandwidth to each school in the system to accommodate mandatory online testing has not been determined, and whereas it has not been determined clearly which governmental body will assume financial responsibility for full implementation, and whereas the connections between the Common Core state standards, the assessments aligned to these standards, and the collection of longitudinal student data, all within the Race to the Top grant, have generated considerable confusion for the public. Further clarification regarding data collection, dissemination, and security, as well as the use of federal grant dollars, is needed. Therefore, be it resolved that the Buncombe County Board of Education requests that the North Carolina State Board of Education, the North Carolina General Assembly, and the North Carolina General Assembly Common Core Study Committee clarify the standards, assessments, and financial commitment.
Okay. Is there a motion to approve the resolution?
I move that we approve the resolution.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, any questions or discussion?
Mr. Chairman,
Oh, well, let me say this one thing just real quick. We will be having at our May work session a discussion about the new North Carolina standards, and so we will be having that at the next work session. I'm sorry. Yes.
yeah, that was what I was going to say. It's not that I don't support this resolution, but I hear so much that for myself, I want to know more.
Okay.
I'm not saying that I couldn't support this. I might very well, but I know myself, and I've tried to keep up. I've tried some of the websites I've gone to. Just give me generalities. What I want to hear from, I want to actually hear from a teacher, in the system that tells in our system, not from another system. I want to hear from a teacher.
Not from a Facebook teacher?
No. I just want to hear from teachers, let me rephrase that, on whether for them this is working or not working. That's what I want to hear. And I don't want the deck stacked. I don't want to, I just want to hear some common sense from some people, because there's a lot of pros and cons out there. And quite frankly, Mr. Chairman, I really don't, do I trust our staff? Absolutely do I trust our staff. But we are told from Raleigh what we have to do. Everybody in this audience knows that. We don't have a lot of control over, what we get to do curriculum-wise, but I just want to know more.
Okay.
I might support this, but I can't vote for it right now because I don't know enough.
Okay. Any other questions or comment? I will say that and Dusty has been on the board longer than I have, and it doesn't seem to matter who's in charge in Raleigh. They don't want to let go. whether it's the standards that we do or how we spend our money. I do agree with that. I think, or even how we set up our calendar. We can't even decide when we want to start school. And so I agree that I would like to see us have more control. I do look forward to our work session in May and hearing from the administration and from some teachers and I hope that we can find some folks that kind of on opposite ends of the spectrum, just to kind of get a differing opinion. I know there's a lot of bad information out there, and I've gone deliberately to websites on both sides of this issue. I've read good things from Republicans. I've read bad things from Republicans, or I've read good things from Democrats and bad things from Democrats, and there is a lot of I feel there's a lot of misinformation out there, and so I do look forward to the I'll agree with you, Mr. Pless. I would probably once we hear from our teachers, maybe we could maybe look at there's a few things in here I think I would like to change, but after that May work session, maybe we can revisit this issue again.
Because, Mr. Chairman, if this to me proves to be not the thing for students, for the local Buncombe County students, I would wholeheartedly support a resolution. But
yeah, the other thing too is we are a little late to the game, 2010. So.
I understand. I understand we are. I understand we are. But sometimes it's got to start. If it's wrong, it's got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
Just if I could, Chair, I appreciate what Dusty says, and I agree that it would be nice to hear what the teachers have to say, because that's what I'm sitting here thinking. I mean, I'm not a curriculum specialist. It seems like there are a lot of people out there on websites that are now curriculum specialists. I understand what the folks were saying and I'm kind of on the fence a little bit with this. I appreciate things being local. I also see the value of being able to measure yourself as a school district. If we want to be the best school district, it's nice to be able to measure ourselves against somebody in Mississippi or somebody in Asheville to somebody in Maine, and the only way to do that, to me, is if you have the common core. So that's the strength of it. Also, I can't imagine there not be some economies to scale with the textbooks. There also has to be some economies to scale with teaching methods. If you have everybody most of the people in the country doing the same thing, it just seems like it's going to be cheaper. I know that one of the concerns is it's more expensive, but we've already had a state common curriculum for the last 50 years that is implemented periodically, and I'm sure that's expensive. To me, it seems like it'd be cheaper to implement it on a bigger scale than an individual scale. So I don't know. I mean, there's a lot to be discussed and debated, and I haven't made up my mind yet either, but I'll be opposing this tonight.
Mr. Chairman, I'm just not a huge fan of big government. And, I'd rather it be kept in the state or kept local. But that's just my opinion.
Okay. Any other?
Well, since I made the motion, I'd just like to address a few things. Basically, this resolution is only asking the state to clarify the standards, assessments, and the financial commitment. And, we were just concerned with the previous resolution about the $11 million that is been called into question. And here we have almost what's been estimated, we don't know for sure, at least $600 million that will be spent on this endeavor that we don't even know will increase student success since it's not been field tested. So this is a much larger stakes, a lot more is at stake with this. And it's very timely because our NCGA Common Core Study Committee will be meeting for the very last time. They have 4 meetings, and they'll be meeting in the next 2 weeks, their final meeting. So if we could send this resolution to them, I think it would be powerful. It would be supportive of our teachers. I hope at this work session in May that we will hear from the teachers, because what I've heard from teachers is that they are not allowed to say anything negative about the Common Core standards. And if that's the case, then we may not hear what we need to hear, I'm afraid, because there needs to be feedback, just like Dusty and Chip have said too. The teachers need to be able to, have some freedom to implement the standards. And right now it's restricted to only adding 15%, and the kids are not going to be tested on that 15%, so there's really no incentive to teach the extra 15% and rather to teach to the test, unfortunately. And I think that this will be a way we could stand with our teachers and just say, we're asking some questions of the legislature, just like Dusty said, he's still got questions. All of us do, because there's a lot of information out there. It's a nonpartisan issue. It's coming from both sides of the aisle. So to me, the resolution is pretty simple. It's just asking for some clarification of the standards assessment and financial commitment. That's all we are asking for in this resolution.
If we're just asking for clarification, Mr. Chairman, I can support it.
Okay. Mr. Chair, could I comment, please?
Yes, sir.
I may be an anomaly in that as I look, I think I'm the only non-registered Republican or Democrat on this board, maybe anywhere in Buncombe County. When I read this resolution, I have really tried to follow this, and I read some things in these first 3 or 4 whereases that I thought, what in the world? I've never heard this before. So I took some time I can't get back, and went and did some study and did some looking, and I'll tell you what I tried to do, because so much of it is political, and that's a shame. But I tried to find things to read that cited research. Okay, research, and I couldn't find anything, and I went to 3 pages of a Google search, and I can't find things with research that show me that the concept and what's going on with the Common Core state standards is bad. I can't find it. Okay, second, I've read a lot of them. They are standards. It is not a curriculum. And maybe I'm an anomaly in this, but I've talked to teachers, and teachers will talk to me. I don't know why, but I don't get from teachers that they're afraid to tell me things. The thing I do hear sometimes is there's always some fear and some skepticism, not skepticism, but some fear and change. There's been a lot of teacher involvement at the state level. I don't know who these private organizations are, 15%. I don't find that anywhere. I don't even know what that means. The concept, though, of Common Core, for me, is what I finally got when I got to college, and that was less broad and deeper. And for me, that was good. And for people that I went to school with, that was a good thing. Not just rote memorization and how much stuff can we learn, but let's take ideas. And that's when I read the standards, when I go to the Department of Public Instruction and read some of them, that's what I see. I don't see a curriculum. I don't see anything in there that tells a teacher how they have to teach their class. My daughter's a math teacher at Irwin High School. I've gotten to know 3 teachers over there this year that I didn't know, and I've talked to all 4 of them, and they're all teaching different ways. Nobody's telling them how to teach. You know, Mr. Chairman, I think you said it well. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but a lot of what's in this resolution I can't support tonight, and could never support, because I can't go anywhere and find it and back it up. That's not politically driven or political opinion, and I try to parse that out. And I'm not perfect, and I may miss some, and some of those may get into my mind and affect my judgment. But I try to parse it out. And so for me, tonight I couldn't support this. However, if it could be redone or done differently, I think the part that talks about, and I'll have to find it, to me, these things are not done in a vacuum, and they're not finite. They're living, breathing animals, and living, breathing things that need input and need to have change, whether they start out and we think they're great, and we get into them and we figure out, no, we might need to change this over here in language arts or math or whatever it is. So the clarification, I don't need clarification standards because they read pretty easily to me when I look at them. But you know, just a continuing monitor and ongoing work. But I don't think that that's something that doesn't already occur. I don't know that we need a resolution to the General Assembly or to any group that's working on these things in Raleigh to say that. So I've talked too long. My kids call me a preacher. I've never preached except tonight. I apologize to the public for preaching so long, but I would not support this resolution.
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
May I?
Yes.
I'm a teacher. And whether I liked it or not, I taught from the standard course of study that came across in the early 80s, maybe. And they've been renormed and renormed and renormed. And now those same standards, that same standard course of study has been narrowed and deepened, and we now call it the Common Core. North Carolina's been doing this since Cooter was a pup. And because the angst that's, sorry, only certain things fit. And North Carolina has been doing this since Cooter was a pup because of these other states that were far behind us and their standards were, far lower than ours. They're frustrated because we've been practicing this for a long time. And I want you to keep that in mind when you talk about this. Because it's the same thing we've been doing, it's just packaged in a different box. And let me also tell everybody in this room and to anybody that's listening, Republicans and Democrats have children, and it is our responsibility as a nonpartisan board to make the best decision for the students in this county, no matter what label they come from. I'm finished.
Dr. Baldwin, do you want to say something?
Some danger, I will say something. I have never seen a perfect set of standards. Now, I'm going to look over at our curriculum leadership, and maybe they have. I don't think there is such thing. But I'll tell you one thing I strongly believe, and I think my curriculum leadership would agree with this, that in providing the best instruction for our students in those classrooms, we do need standards. And maybe that's something, Democrat, Republican, Independent, maybe whatever political affiliation that's not in that mix, I think probably all would agree with that. I have followed this as superintendent. I was at a meeting this afternoon, a regional meeting with the state superintendent. I heard a lot of discussion about the Common Core. And I will tell you, I can honestly see how this has created so much confusion, so much misinformation, a connection that somehow strongly ties in Common Core with a federal government mandate and a connection with assessment. And I think it's very confusing. I've sat here for 5 years on this board, and I think I heard Mr. Pless give the greatest bit of wisdom I've probably heard since sitting up here.
Good for you.
Not that there aren't very wise people on this board, because there are. And I also heard the statement, stand by our teachers. And I think he's exactly right. If you want to know truly about Common Core, and it's not only Common Core, now realize, again, information, facts, language arts, and math. Those of you who are parents of high school students and high school teachers, I see you smiling. That's 2 areas of core, but that is a small percentage of the entire curriculum. The entire curriculum, as Ms. Franklin correctly said, has been revised, adjusted, and will be revised and adjusted multiple times by the state of North Carolina. No one sitting in Washington. And I'll tell you, I'll sit here and say it's a good thing. We need to continue to look at standards and revise them because years go by, the future changes, the demands, the competition that our kids are going to face change, and the level and quality of education, in my opinion, is going to continue to skyrocket because we're on a global platform. And I believe that strongly. But if you want to really hear about Common Core, you want to really get down to where the rubber meets the road, these are the people you ask, because they're the ones instructing those standards and that Common Core in that classroom. So, Mr. Pless, I think that was just brilliant words, because you're exactly right. That's who we need to hear from. There are plenty of curriculum experts out here, and I'm going to tell you, there's plenty of curriculum experts that making millions of dollars
On the internet.
on the internet and everywhere else, and they're selling you a bag of goods.
That's right.
And they sell you a bag of goods because what they've been able to do is convince you of a perception that they've made reality to you. So let's really find out what the reality is. And I see Ms. Pass back there. I think we could probably invite some of our top teachers to come in and talk to this board about not just Common Core, that's only a small part of our curriculum, but talk to us about the entire scope of standards that our teachers are given and assigned to take, and then from those standards guide the instruction that takes place in that classroom for our kids. There's your experts. I'm not an expert, and I'm superintendent. Maybe I should be. They're the ones in the trenches on a daily basis. And that's who I look to for my answers. So if we can hang on to that work session, we're going to talk, and we're going to have some teacher representatives that are going to tell it like it is.
Okay, any other comments?
I just wanted to close by saying, you know, Dr. Baldwin's right. I can't wait for the work session. You know, it was supposed to happen the first of the year, and the problem is, it was promised back in December, and the problem is that this state study committee, you know, this is their last meeting in a week and a half, and you know, they should be asking teachers. I hope they are. They should be asking school boards for their input too. I know they asked for public comment at their last meeting, and they definitely had it. About 2/3 of the people were opposed or had questions about the Common Core that spoke. And I attended the first Common Core Study Committee meeting in Raleigh, and Dr. Atkinson spoke. They had Michael Brickman from the Fordham Institute, and it was very clear there that they were saying that there is only, Dr. Atkinson herself, Pat, look it up or call her on the phone or tweet her or something, she said there was only 15% wiggle room. And so it's out there somewhere. Hopefully I can send you a link or something.
I just don't understand even what that means as it relates to standards. Standards simply guide what we're teaching. Correct, Dr. Baldwin? I mean, I don't even know what that means. I don't understand it. I don't care who said it. I don't understand what it means.
Well, the standards drive the curriculum, and so there is a connection there that, you know, you can't negate, no matter what.
What though? What 15% can't be negated or could be added to? I don't understand what that means.
Well, it means you can add up to 15%, but you can't take anything away from these copyrighted standards that were developed by private organizations.
Yeah, to me, the National Governors Association and the Council of Chief State School Officers is about as public a group of people as you can have.
They're Washington, D.C. trade associations.
North Carolina the National Governors Association has got to be, I would assume, made up of the governors of this country.
Just like our North Carolina School Boards Association, it's not a public entity.
Okay, we'll disagree on semantics. You know, how the National Governors Association is not a public entity, other than in the way that it's put together for paperwork and LLC and all those types of things. When the governors get together and the Council of Chief State School Officers get together and they bring in, who was the third entity that came in and helped them with it? I can't find it here in this resolution that someone gave us.
Yeah, they're trade associations. They collect membership dues.
Okay, let's stop arguing over
well,
what's,
since I did
what the
propose
governor's group is. I mean, it's not really helpful to this discussion.
Well, I proposed the resolution, and it's just for asking for the clarification of the standards, assessments, and financial commitment. I know this board is very concerned about the budget, and this is a huge issue because we have to buy all new textbooks. We have to test all the children on electronic devices. It's very expensive proposition. So,
Could I call the question, please?
No, not while Ms. Baldwin's talking.
Yeah, I'm just closing that. I think that we all have concerns. If you have kids
Ms.
in the
Baldwin,
school
if you
system.
have something new to add to the discussion, let's try
No, I
to move
was
it
only
along. You're
going-
being repetitive.
I agree. You're right. I'm sorry for rambling. My child, I hate to bring up my own children, but I'm the Reynolds representative, so naturally I would go to Reynolds High School and ask the math teachers questions, and I hope this will not be held against them. But they are telling me the kids are coming in with lower math skills every year, and I believe we've actually been doing this Common Core math approach, the constructivist approach, for the past 6 years at least. And it's called Investigations in Math. That this approach lends itself to the process, and that's what the Common Core standards are about. It's the process is more important than getting the right answer sometimes, unfortunately. And what I was finding with my child's class, Math 2, that's taken the place of geometry, which, by the way, the standards say we can still teach geometry. But Buncombe County, for some reason, and I would like to know the answer to this sometime, why we are taking geometry, Algebra 1 and Algebra 2 out of our school system and place using this integrated approach from Common Core. But my experience was awful, that the teacher was getting her lesson plans from the central office every day. How is that freedom for a teacher? That's what is epitomized by the Common Core standards, is the centralized approach. And that's why I gave this example.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to offer the superintendent and/or Ms. Swanger an opportunity to answer to that, because that's a pretty serious allegation that was just made in reference to curriculum and how it's being taught in a given high school and/or across the system.
Can we take a break for a few minutes?
Can,
All right.
it's fine with me.
Let's take a 5-minute break real quick.